Hello and welcome back to Unholy Whispers. I am your host, Daniel Harker. Tonight's story is one that genuinely unsettled me while reading through the police reports and the personal journal entries provided to us. It doesn't rely on ghosts or demons or things that go bump in the night. It relies on something much more primal. The fear of being hunted by something that looks human, but fundamentally is not. The following account is based on the experience of a 26-year-old freelance archivist named Adrian Mercer. Adrian was a rational man, a skeptic, someone who grounded his life in facts and data. He wasn't prone to flights of fancy. In October of last year, Adrian took a temporary job cataloging a private library in a remote estate in the Cascade foothills of Washington State. He thought he was going there for the money and the solitude. He didn't know he was walking into a feeding ground. Before we begin, I need you to do something for me. Check your windows. Make sure they're locked. Turn off the lights. Get comfortable. And try to ignore the feeling that someone is standing right behind you. Here is Adrian's story. I have gone over the events of those 3 nights 1,000 times in my head. I've tried to find the holes in my own memory, tried to convince myself that it was sleep deprivation or carbon monoxide poisoning or a psychotic break. I wanted it to be me. I wanted to be the broken one because the alternative is so much worse. If I'm crazy, then the world is still safe. If I'm not, then there are things in the woods that evolution forgot to filter out. It started on a Tuesday. I had accepted a 6-week contract from the estate of a deceased philanthropist named Arthur Vane. The Vane Estate was a sprawling, mid-century modern structure built into the side of a cliff, overlooking a sea of dense, ancient pines. The nearest town, a place called Concrete, was 45 minutes away down a single-lane gravel switchback. The house was beautiful, but architectural beauty often comes at the cost of comfort. The entire back wall of the house, facing the forest and the valley, was floor-to-ceiling glass. During the day, it was breathtaking, felt like living in a treehouse. But at night, the dynamic flipped. When the sun went down and I turned on the lights inside, the glass became a mirror for me and a showcase for everything outside. I was inside a lit aquarium, and the forest was the dark ocean looking in. The first 2 nights were uneventful. The isolation was jarring, but I fell into a rhythm. I worked in the library from 8 in the morning until 6 at night, cataloging rare maritime books. The silence was absolute. No cars, no planes, just the wind hissing through the Douglas firs. On the 3rd night, the weather turned. A low-pressure system stalled over the mountains, bringing a thick, suffocating fog that erased the valley view. By 9 p.m., I couldn't see 5 feet past the glass wall. It was just a wall of gray swirling vapor. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the first sound. It came from the front deck, the wooden platform that wrapped around the side of the house. It was a wet slap, like a heavy, damp towel being dropped onto the wood. Thwack, then a pause. Thwack. It was rhythmic. Footsteps. But the cadence was wrong. It was too heavy for a raccoon, too deliberate for a deer. It sounded like a man walking in soaking wet clothes, barefoot. I froze, the coffee pot hovering in my hand. My first thought wasn't monsters, it was trespassers. The Vane Estate was full of valuable art. I set the pot down and walked to the panel by the door to check the security feeds. The cameras showed nothing, just the gray static of the fog and the black and white grain of the night vision struggling to penetrate the mist. I watched the monitor for 5 minutes. Nothing moved. I convinced myself it was a branch falling, or maybe snow melting off the roof, even though it wasn't snowing. I went back to work. Around midnight, I was in the library. The library was in the center of the house, away from the glass walls, which made me feel safer. I was transcribing a journal from the 1800s when I heard a voice. It was distant, muffled by the walls. "Hello? Is someone there?" My stomach dropped. It was a man's voice. It sounded confused, hurt. I grabbed the heavy flashlight I kept in the emergency kit and walked into the hallway. The voice came again, louder this time, coming from the front door. "Please, I had an accident. My car." I approached the door. It was a solid oak slab with no peephole, but there was a narrow window beside it. I didn't unlock the door. I pressed my face against the narrow window and shone the flashlight out. The beam cut through the fog, illuminating the driveway. Standing about 20 feet away was a man. He was wearing a red flannel shirt and jeans. He was facing away from me, looking back toward the woods. "Hey!" I shouted through the closed door. "Are you okay?" The man didn't turn around. He just stood there, perfectly still. The way he held himself was rigid, like a mannequin. "Sir," I called out. Then he spoke, but his lips didn't move. He didn't turn his head. The voice just happened. "Please, I had an accident. My car." It was the exact same intonation, the exact same pitch. It wasn't a man repeating a phrase. It was like a recording being played back. A cold prickle of sweat broke out on the back of my neck. "Turn around," I said, my voice shaking. The man slowly began to turn. The movement was jerky, mechanical. His left shoulder dipped, then his right hip. When he finally faced me, I dropped the flashlight. He didn't have a face. Where his features should have been eyes, nose, mouth, there was just smooth, pale skin stretched tight over bone. I scrambled back from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I slammed the deadbolt home, even though it was already locked. I backed away, grabbing a heavy brass fire poker from the living room fireplace. When I looked back at the window, the man was gone. The rest of the story remains unchanged, except it was Adrian Mercer. According to official documentation, Adrian Mercer was declared missing 2 days after fleeing the estate. No forwarding address, no confirmed sightings, just an abandoned Honda found near a ravine 5 miles from the property. For weeks, search teams combed the surrounding forest. Then they found him. Adrian Mercer was alive, but not himself. He was sitting in a clearing, just inside the tree line, staring at nothing. His skin was pale and stretched tight, and his eyes were empty, like smooth glass. When they tried to approach him, he spoke in a voice that was almost his own, but not quite. "I saw it. It saw me. It is learning." No one could get close. When the wind shifted, they could hear other voices, muffled, distant, calling Adrian's name, but they weren't human. The team left him there, terrified to touch him. By the time night fell, he was gone. So if you're ever in the woods and you hear a voice calling for help or see someone standing unnaturally still, don't stop. Don't look. Just run. Because by the time you realize something is wrong, it already knows your name. And it's learning how to sound like you. Stay inside the light. Lock your doors. And remember, silence is never empty. Some things are still out there, and some of them, they've already found you.